Hi, this is Paul, and this is Rough Draft for Sunday, where I run through the current draft of my Sunday sermon. It will change quite likely between now and Sunday. Sometimes it changes a lot, sometimes it changes a little. If you're curious to see what the final draft looks like, you can find it on the Livingstone's YouTube channel. Jesus will lose the Judean culture war, and here in this arc of Titus's triumph, you see the menorah paraded through the streets in 70 AD. The Roman armies will come down and they will inflict their punishment on the Jewish people. Not one stone will be left on another, as Jesus said. In anticipation of that, Jesus weeps over Jerusalem. He cries out, "Why couldn't you let me gather you?" The struggle between the Romans and the Jews, desire for cultural, religious, and political autonomy will boil over in 67 AD in a war that the Jews will lose. God will not rescue the Jews in their political poverty as compared to Rome. Rome will celebrate. Why fight a culture war like Jesus if he loses his culture war? We like our heroes to be winners. We like them uncrucified. We shouldn't want to win. Shouldn't we want to win our culture war? Aren't there important things at stake? Aren't there important public justice issues? Aren't there important personal morality issues? How many died in that revolt? The second temple was destroyed. Didn't God care about that? Even the Son of Man, it appears, couldn't stop. The Son of God, it appears, couldn't stop this or didn't want to stop this. What happened? And should we not pay any attention to Jesus because of this? The question stands, what exactly was Jesus doing? Well, we're continuing our walk through the Gospel of Luke on the way to the crucifixion and resurrection. This is the Lenten season of the Christian calendar. After taking aside the 12, he said to them, "Behold, we are going up to Jerusalem, and all the things that are written by the prophets with reference to the Son of Man will be accomplished. For he will be handed over to the Gentiles, and will be mocked and mistreated and spit on. And after flogging him, they will kill him. And on the third day, he will rise." And they understood none of these things. And this saying was concealed from them, and they did not comprehend the things that were said. What is going on? Jesus tells them flat out exactly what's going to be happen. He will be mocked and mistreated and spit on and flogged, and after flogging him, they will kill him. Jesus lays it all out for them. And in fact, in the Greek, it's a little bit more vivid. Those verbs just are boom, 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 lined up, and sort of like the person who opens the door to the police officer and the police chaplain when they have terrible news to deliver. The disciples don't comprehend a thing. Now, we're about to have a series of stories that take place in Jericho, and the setting is important. Jericho, of course, is famous because of what happened at the beginning of the book of Joshua, where Israel marches around 7 times, and the Lord brings the walls down, but the city's under the ban. And the Israelites are told, you're not allowed to rebuild that city, which is a dramatic command because by virtue of the trade routes and the geography and geology of the location, that's the perfect place for a city. And so, in fact, it's one of the oldest it's one of the oldest sites known that cities have been built. It's absolutely necessary for a city to be there for all the reasons that make cities wealthy and powerful. And God tells Israel, don't build a city there. It's sort of like telling a home builder, don't build a front door. But of course, Jericho was rebuilt, and the Bible talks about that. And, well, the trade routes were established. And it's sort of like there not being a center of commerce in New York City at the mouth of the Hudson, or New Orleans at the mouth of the Mississippi, or San Francisco at the edge of the Delta and the Great Harbor here in Northern California. Jesus enters Judea, in some ways walking in the footsteps of Joshua and Israel. And all of this with this heightened national sense of anticipation that the great rabbi, the one with all of this power, is going to go to Jerusalem and finally deal with the Roman problem. That's what everybody wants from Jesus, and whether that happens through violent revolt or some divine manifestation by which God, as in the Old Testament, will drive out the evildoers from the Holy Land, that's what they want from Jesus. And everyone is just filled with anticipation. With every footstep he takes towards Jerusalem, the climax is about to come. Don't forget what Jesus just said will happen when he gets there, but that makes no sense. Don't bother listening to him. So the crowd comes out to meet him, and we've been sort of following Ken Bailey's Jesus Through Middle Eastern Eyes, and Ken Bailey noted that, well, this is actually a very common pattern in this part of the world. The town, the delegation from town, all of the important people will come out to meet Jesus. He's this very special, he's a very important person right now. There's great anticipation. In Jericho, they'll know that he's coming, and the best houses in town will make preparations to host Jesus, and maybe he'll stay overnight, and maybe he'll get to meet and have theological and political and important conversations with the most important people of the town. That's what they're all waiting for, and so they go out to meet him. On top of this, Passover is coming, and this is the celebration of Israel's liberation from Egypt. I mean, you couldn't lay this out any more clearly. If God is going to show up and win this culture war against the Romans, Jesus is the man, and now is the time, and Jericho is the path, and here we go. Now it happened that as he drew near to Jericho, a certain blind man was sitting on the side of the road begging. And when he heard a crowd going by, he inquired, "What does this mean? He's blind after all." Now, why would he be sitting there? Well, American cities have more panhandling than I've ever seen in my life. When I lived in the Dominican Republic, I was quite used to it. There was panhandling and squeegee guys at almost every major stoplight in Santo Domingo, where I lived for a couple of years. And, well, beggars are part of the culture. They afford the service of giving people a chance to do their moral religious obligation and give to the poor, and not unlike many homeless people are sort of acting here. But they're sort of part of the scenery, and they're kind of a nuisance. And so that's certainly not what this march to Jerusalem through Jericho is all about. But he asks, he hears the crowd, and what's going on? And they say, well, Jesus the Nazarene is passing by. And he knew a little bit something about this, and he called out, "Jesus, son of David." Seems he's up on the messianic train too. "Have mercy on me." And those who were in front rebuked him that he would be silent. But he cried out even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And if you live in a place with a lot of homeless people, they are not always so compliant with whatever it is that the important people of the neighborhood wish to have accomplished. This guy won't be shut up. Now, revolutions often say that they are really all about the little guy. They are about the oppressed. And this is the movement of those below to rise up and find justice and do all of that. Well, even in the revolt, however, people are valued according to their usefulness to the revolution. The people who are strong, the people who are smart, the people who are wealthy, actually the people with all of the advantages are the ones valued by the revolution, because revolutions aren't made of homeless people and beggars usually. They're made of soldiers and people who can get things done. Certainly not blind men. They are too little to actually matter, even though the revolution is often conducted in their name. So Jesus stops, and he orders him to be brought to him. In other words, all the people that were telling him to shush up are now told, go fetch him. Bring him here. And so the ones who are trying to get him to get out of the way are the ones who are now having to escort him to the front. And when he approached, he asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" Now, this seems like an obvious question, but it really isn't, because as I saw time and time again in the Dominican Republic, and you can see in some places here in the United States, if you have a physical deformity, it's really a value in the begging game. And so, a little bit of deformity, maybe you can eke out a day's work, but if you're blind, everybody gets it. And so actually, his disability was, in fact, his career. And so it's not obvious what he wants. And he said, "Lord, that I might regain my sight." What does this man want? And Jesus said to him, "Regain your sight. Your faith has saved you." Saved him from what? He's now jobless. He had a secure income being a beggar, but who does he want to see? What does he want to do? How does he want his life transformed? And Jesus says, "Your faith saved you." Who is his faith in? What is his faith for? And immediately he regained his sight and began to follow, glorifying God. And all the people, when they saw it, gave praise to God. Well, earlier he was a distraction, and now he's the center of the party, because if Jesus can do this, think of what he can do to the Romans. And he entered, and he was going to travel through Jericho. And I'm sure there were all of these people watching Jesus. How far does he get? Is he, Jesus, please come and stay. This is the way that the righteous extend hospitality. Jesus, we have the best home, or at least the best righteous home in town available to you. We have dinner for you. Won't you please come and just have a meal? You're welcome to stay the night. Stay as long as you can. We would be so honored to have you stay with us, Jesus. But he's passing through. And you imagine they're all crestfallen. And there was a man named Zacchaeus, and he was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. Why? Well, this is Jericho. All the trade routes go through here. A lot of the taxation in a situation like this would come from basically taxing the people who have money, and that's a lot of the caravans and the traders going through. He was the chief tax collector. He was the chief tax farmer. He was the guy who had the money. He's also the biggest trader in town. He is not the kind of place that the big and important people in town had imagined Jesus would stay. And in fact, they all felt a little bit snubbed. And then Zacchaeus is in a tree. He might have been in the tree not just because he was short and wanted to see Jesus. He might have been all there so he's not down in amongst the crowd because he might get rolled. He was seeking to see Jesus, who he was, and he was not able as a result of the crowd because he was short in stature. And so he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree so that he could see, because Jesus was going through that way. And when he came to the place, Jesus looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly, because it is necessary for me to stay at your house today." Why is that necessary? Jesus once again upends and offends. Zacchaeus, like the prodigal son, however, is going to respond. Why is it necessary for Jesus to stay at Zacchaeus' house when it seemed he was going to snub all of the righteous and important revolutionary people in the town? And he came down quickly and welcomed him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all began to complain. Why did they complain? Didn't they want Jesus to at least have a meal in their town? Didn't they want Jesus to stay? They rejoiced when the beggar received his sight, but now they're complaining. He has gone in to find lodging with a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, "Behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I am giving to the poor. And if I have extorted anyone from anything, I am paying it back 4 times as much." The Old Testament law required double. And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house. Salvation came to the blind man. Salvation comes to Zacchaeus, because he too is a son of Abraham. Remember Luke 15? Remember the prodigal son? Remember both sons? For the Son of Man came to seek and to save those who are lost. Now, Zacchaeus is not offended at being called a sinner. He knew exactly what his game was. And Zacchaeus is not offended at being one who was lost. In fact, he is now responding to grace. Zacchaeus didn't say, Jesus, I'll tell you what, if I make my life right, will then you come to my house? No, Jesus says, I'm coming to your house. And in response, Zacchaeus cleans up his act. Now, while they were listening to this thing, now this is usually where we sort of pause the story, but I wanted to include everything in Jericho, because actually the entire Jericho experience is one thing. Because Zacchaeus just spoke to Jesus, and now we don't know if this could be happening on the road or this could be happening in Zacchaeus' home. But we've got the story of the blind man, we've got the story of Zacchaeus, and now Jesus is going to tell a parable. And it's a parable similar to what we find in other places, but there's some little twists in it. Now, while they were listening to these things, he went on and told a parable, because he was near Jerusalem, and they thought that the kingdom of God was going to appear immediately. Well, what would that look like? Well, that would look like Jesus going to Jerusalem, and either by mobilizing the crowd or calling down armies of angels or conjuring up a storm, or just with a word making soldiers dead, that the kingdom will be restored to Israel, just like the disciples asked for in Acts chapter 1. That's what they're looking for, and God's kingdom is going to come immediately. Therefore, he said, a certain nobleman traveled to a distant country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. Now, this is what they understood, because Israel was a client state, and basically the Herods, to get their right to rule, would travel up to Rome and get permission from the emperor and come down, and even then have to sort of fight for it. And summoning 10 of his own slaves, he gave them 10 minas. Now, a minas is about a third of a yearly income for a laborer. So it's not a huge amount of money, but it's not an insignificant amount of money. And I'm using this translation partly because they're using the word slaves, because these people were slaves. But slaves in the ancient world were a little bit different from the imagery that we have of slaves that are in the antebellum South, for example. And slaves could be in charge of a tremendous amount of responsibility and property. So he's summoning 10 of his own slaves, and he gave them 10 minas, about 1/3 income, and said to them, do business until I come back. But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, we do not want this man to be king over us. Now remember, they are taking offense at Jesus going to Zacchaeus' house. In fact, Jesus, it's very unusual to invite yourself. Zacchaeus, I'm sure, would have loved to have invited Jesus, but didn't dare. Jesus invited himself, and they all took offense at Jesus. And so, well, who is the nobleman who is going to become king? And, well, why don't the people want them to be king over them? And it happened that after he returned, after receiving the kingdom, he ordered these slaves to whom he had given the money to be summoned to him, so that he could know exactly what they had gained by trading. That's what they were supposed to do. So the first arrived, saying, sir, your mina has made 10 more. This is a very skillful slave. And he said to him, well done, good slave. Because you have been faithful in a very small thing, have authority over 10 cities. Oh my. He's been given a little, but now he's going to be given great responsibility, and he will be a great man, although still a slave. And the second one came, saying, sir, your mina has made 5. Your mina has made 5 minas. Oh, he's good. Not as good as the first one, but he's very good. So he said to this one, and you over 5 cities. Notice the disproportionality in reward. A third of a year's income, not an insignificant amount of money, but responsible for 10 cities because the kingdom has come. Well, this is kind of sort of the thing that the mother of James and John wanted. Can my son sit at your right and left hand when you come into your kingdom? Because when kings come in, they're shelling out favors. And another saying, Sir, behold your mina, which I had put away for safekeeping in a piece of cloth. For I was afraid of you, because you are a severe man. You withdraw what you do not deposit, and you reap what you do not sow. Well, this is basically what ancient kings did. He said to him, By your own words I will judge you, you wicked slave. You knew that I am a severe man, withdrawing what I did not deposit and reaping what I did not sow. And why did you not give my money to the bank? And I, when I returned, would have collected it with interest. You think he's going to give him one city? Then he turns to the bystanders. Well, why would this little detail of the story? Well, because either they're looking at a crowd in Zacchaeus' house, or they're looking at a crowd in the city, and Jesus is making a point. Take away from him the mina, and give it to the one who has 10 minas. What? And they said to him, Sir, he already has 10. Yeah, look what he did with them. I tell you that everyone who has more will be given. Has what? Has what more? What kind of message is Jesus giving to these people? But the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. But these enemies of mine who did not want to be king over them, bring them and slaughter them in my presence. Now, right away, we have lots of moral questions. This slave-owning king reaps where he does not sow, and withdraws where he does not deposit, and kills and has his enemies slaughtered in front of him. Now, Jesus was very conscious of teaching by example in the crowd. He had just offended the big men of the town by choosing to honor Zacchaeus, the town's most hated oppressor, and in doing so transformed Zacchaeus there on the spot to someone who outperformed the legal requirements in restoration and generosity. This is the king they don't want. The treatment of the enemies was standard treatment in the ancient world. Politics was not about being able to lose a vote. Politics was life and death. This isn't sanctioning the ancient practice, but if this is true below, this is about the seriousness that Jesus is telling the people to take him with. What are we to make of these three stories? Really four. Because remember where we started, Jesus told them exactly what his revolution would do. He's going to go into Jerusalem. He's going to be arrested. He's going to be killed. And he's going to rise from the dead. Now, if I had risen from the dead because of someone who wronged me and killed me in the most humiliating way, I'd like to pop out of the grave and go to that guy and say, how do you like me now? That's not Jesus. We think it's cool that Jesus was so revolutionary. Oh, look at Jesus. Jesus is really a man of the little guy. Yeah, much more than we are. But then Jesus talks to the oppressor, the tax collector, the one who is in alignment with the imperial Romans and the injustice they are about to do, the injustice that apparently God will not stop or rescue Israel from. So he's cool when he helps the little guy until it's our revolution he upends. He defies revolutionary conventional wisdom that we use, that we elevate the useful. And he defies status games to power by snubbing the big men of the town by receiving hospitality with the town's most unjust man. He's looking for total, risk-taking allegiance, and he's not taking excuses about playing it safe. That's Jesus' revolution, and that should terrify us. You know, we see Jesus through 2,000 years of history, and we think, oh, wasn't he dreamy? When the fact is, what he's doing is making all The people that he's going to need hate him. And the people that would be useful to him want to see him stopped. Jesus is so disruptive to our sensitivities. He elevates the useless. He honors the sinners. And failing to collaborate sufficiently with our activism for public justice and private morality, we just don't know what to do with him. He is on his way to Jerusalem, where he will become our victim and lose in an unthinkable way for the Son of God. All the skepticism about Jesus being the Son of God, a great prophet, or someone that God would be down with, well, all of our karmic ideas about right and wrong, Jesus just destroys them. And then we get the message, this is the plan of God all along, as it is written by the prophets. What does this have to do with us? Well, if you're a Christian, we are called to follow, but we often don't know how. And so there are actually 3 stories here for us. Look at the blind man. He rejects his security crutch, which is blindness, and he opts to see so that he can see and follow Jesus. That should be what we want. What do you want? I want to see. Okay. You're not going to be able to sit by the side of the road and beg anymore. Your security goes. Look at Zacchaeus here. He responds in grateful obedience that outperforms the righteousness of his critics who counted themselves among the righteous. Look at the 10 Minas slave. Faithful with relatively little, risk-taking, leaves it all out there. It could very well be that he loses his mina, and he's got nothing for when this demanding master shows, but he's going to go for it. This is what Jesus requires. This is what Jesus demands. And he is rewarded greatly. How will we respond? Will we see? Will we respond to Jesus' gracious, undeserved invitation to us with generosity that outperforms those who are the moral bean counters? And will we take risks in doing it? Jesus requires nothing less.